All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. You've picked an amazing week to tune in because we have a spectacular guest here. This is a conversation that I am so excited to have because I'm just completely intrigued by the guest we have on. We've got a woman on who has just completely transformed her life and is in the midst of transforming her life. I'll let her talk about all of the travails that she's gone through, all that she's overcome. I even gave her permission, if she needs to use any word she wants to talk about the depths that she's climbed out of. So if you hear a little bit of that colorful language, no, it's part of the story. Sit back, listen, and enjoy, because we've got a woman who has come out of some mess and she is here thriving and she's ready to change your lives. So Amber Miller, welcome to the show. No pressure, but change lives today. This is exciting.
Oh, thank you. What an introduction. And I like how you just gave them a little warning right off the bat that there might be some F-bombs, but
It's going to be real. Let's do it.
That's my favorite word, but that's also why people resonate with me, because I do keep it real. And I had one of my very first clients tell me that I am a master at swearing, that I just know how to drop it. I do it in an art almost. So yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, I grew up in a military household and my dad really was a sailor. So yes. If you say it, I'll understand it. It's all good. If it happens, it happens.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Like you said, I am Amber Miller. I've been through some shit in my life, and everybody has, and we're all here to connect and share our stories. And so this is my story. I started drinking when I was 15 years old, when everybody else was, my parents, my friends, everybody. That's what we do here in the Midwest. And so I, just continued drinking throughout my high school years. I worked 2 jobs, so 30 hours a week. I was still on principal's honor roll. So I gave myself permission. There weren't any excuses for me not to do it. From there, my parents got divorced when I was 18 because my mom's drinking had increased and my dad had quit a couple years prior. And that just kind of escalated for her. And she grew up with a very traumatic childhood. And she carried all of that with her throughout her whole life. She buried it when we were younger, and she was the caretaker at home and everything like that. But as we got older to be teenagers, then she needed an outlet. And so that's when her drinking picked up. And when I was 22, she passed away from alcohol and a host of other health issues that go along with that. And that was probably the most defining moment in my life, losing my biggest fan. She put me on a pedestal. Her love for her kids was just unbelievable. We were her proudest accomplishments. And I remember trying to get her help when I was 22, a month before she passed. I remember calling and scheduling, something to try and get her help. And we had this date set up, and then she passed a month before that took place. And I remember thinking that somebody needs to change the system, that there needs to be more resources for people to get help and just reach out. But I didn't think that I could be that person. I wanted to be that person, but I didn't think I could be because I was in the midst of my own train wreck. And so for the next how many years, for the next 10 years or so, I went on with my own issues, blacking out. I was broke. I did have a boyfriend. Actually, he's still with me somehow. But so for the next, 11 years, this went on, that was my life as well. When I was 27, we had our first child, the son. And for the first few years of his life, I still just wasn't as present as I could have been. I was still caught up in the party girl. That was my identity. But that's not who I was on the inside. And then we went on to have our second child, our daughter. And um I just decided, like, it got more and more apparent that I needed to be home with them. Eventually, it got to the point where I still wanted to help people in that recovery space, but I didn't know how because I was a hypocrite because I was still drinking. And then one night I was up at our local bar and I was talking to the mother of a girl that I graduated high school with. And in talking to her, and she was telling me about how her daughter, like, the drinking was really bad. And I knew that I needed to have a conversation with this old high school classmate of mine. So I had her over to my house, and I recognized all of this situation because this was me 10 years prior dealing with my mom. And so it was like, ta-da, it was like, okay, this is why I had to go through all of that crap so I can help her, because like it was so familiar and I knew the steps that her mom needed to take. So I had this girl over to my house for lunch, and I just told her where the bear shits, that she was knocking on death's door. And when she left that day, I gave her probably about a 2-minute hug because I wasn't sure if I was going to ever see her alive again. And it was about 3 weeks later that she decided that she was ready for treatment, that something that I said that day clicked for her. And honestly, I think it was somebody giving a damn, that, that somebody cares enough to like want her because she didn't love herself enough. And so we went up and she got treatment, and she's pretty much been sober for a year now and she's doing amazing. And seeing her that morning, before we took her to treatment, like, I seen somebody at rock bottom, and she looks so fragile. And I remember thinking to myself, and I was still drinking at this point, and I remember thinking to myself, like, she didn't ask to get to that place. And so from there, I decided, like, alcohol no longer has a place in my life. Like, I had to get my crap together. Otherwise, I was going to be repeating the same history as my mom. And so I quit drinking. I read a book. I quit drinking. I've done a complete 180. Like, life is on fire. Like, the curtains have been pulled back, like, alcohol is such a lie, and now I just need to scream this from the rooftops.
Mm.
So that was a lot, and so I will let you ask me whatever.
No, well, first of all, thank you for your willingness to share all of that. I mean, I think you've got so many amazing gifts, and I think your transparency and vulnerability has to be right up at the top. Telling that story is, there's so much magic and power in what you just told, that I think people in all walks of life are hearing things that they're resonating with. I know, just hearing that story, I wouldn't classify myself as somebody that struggles with alcohol addiction.
Mhm.
Um, However, addiction is very real, and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Um, as we were joking when we first came on, I said I grew up in a military household. My dad was a sailor, so I've heard it all. I heard myself in that moment already excusing behaviors based
Mhm.
off of the people that are around me or my upbringing. You mentioned that at 15, you started drinking because that's what we do here in the Midwest, right? And you also were seeing it in your mom.
Mhm.
Do you look back on that and say that it was the result of your environment, your family, that led you down this dark and windy road? Or do you feel like it's 100% on you? You own it. It's your responsibility, something that you had to overcome because of your choices.
It's absolutely environment. Monkey see, monkey do. And yeah, that's what my parents did. And even though I seen them make asses of themselves, and I would hate that, and I didn't want to be like that, but like in my mind I was a better drunk than my parents, than my mom. And so like I wasn't that bad. And so yeah, those excuses do play out. But then when it got to that point where, I seen my high school classmate, at rock bottom, and it's just this slow progression. And I said about my mom that it was a slow suicide is really what it was.
Yeah.
And so it's just these habits, like she didn't ask to wake up there. And so it was in that moment that I decided to stop making excuses,
Yeah.
because I was the queen of twisting things around. Like, it didn't matter if my best friends told me, like, that I should cut back, that maybe I should stop. Like, I had an excuse for anything. And I got those from my mom, and I came up with my own. And then I just decided to stop making those excuses,
Mm,
because I wanted to be a better example for my kids. I didn't just want to say, do as I say, not as I do, kind of
mhm.
thing.
It leads to another question I have here. Speaking of your kids, and I'm sure as your kids continue to grow, you'll have lots of conversations with them about
Mhm.
the mistakes that you made, or not
Mhm.
to do things because it's a slippery slope that leads to
Yep.
other behaviors, or it's a gateway to other behaviors. Um, as you're describing things, you talked about the fact that you were an alcoholic and that you were broke and you made all of these excuses. When you reflect back and you say that you've made this transformation, what have you transformed? Was it when you gave up drinking? Did that change everything? Was it when you said, I'm no longer going to make excuses? Did that change everything? What was that tipping point that opened up the floodgates? What was the gateway to the positive change?
Um, Actually, I would have to even back it up before that. So about 4 years ago, I read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, because I didn't know what the hell to do with money. I was broke and living paycheck to paycheck, and I realized that some people don't live that way. And so I read that book, and I decided to get our finances in order. And so in a matter of 3 years, paid off the house, 3 vehicles, our boat, and our camper. And it's like, holy crap, like, if a book can do that for my life, like, what other kind of books are out there? And so then it eventually led me to Alan Carr's The Easy Way to Quit Drinking. And it's interesting because I had that book in my possession for like a couple of weeks before I decided to open up, because I was scared of what was on the other side of that. And then finally it just got to the point of, what the hell are you so scared of? Like, why are you so scared to quit drinking? And like, but I was more curious to know what was on the other side of that than I was to let that fear dictate me. And so from there, I quit the drinking, and it was probably about 3 or 4 months before I told anybody that I had quit, because one, I didn't know if this was real, and two, like, I had told people that I was going to quit 8 million times before, and that never happened. And so for about 3 or 4 months, I kept it a little bit of a secret, and it was really the flip of a switch. It was just the universe, it was my time to be done with it, and from there, like, the curtains have really been pulled back, like, everything became clear. After that, I hired my first coach, my first life coach, and started working through, like, who I was in the past doesn't have to be who I'm gonna be in the future. And so it was like going through that experience and like peeling off the layers of what society like had made me. And it's like, who is Amber Miller on the inside? And then it's like, holy shit, she's still like hilarious and good looking. And like I have so much energy now to give to everybody and to pour into everybody in such a positive way that, like, if I could share what I feel like for 1 hour with everybody, like, everybody would walk away from drinking. Like, that's how good I feel about myself and how I show up for the world. And like, I just want to like sprinkle that everywhere.
Mm. Is there ever any temptation to go back?
There really hasn't been much. of a temptation. So we went on a vacation pretty early on in my sobriety, and I remember getting down to South Padre, Texas. And like my other half, he drinks, and my friends, they're drinkers too. And I remember getting down there, and I went into the bathroom, and I texted another girl that had quit right around the same time as me. We didn't quit together, but it just so happened. And I was like, all right, I need one. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to wait until everybody else has at least two drinks. And if I still wanted to drink at that time, then I would. By the time they were done with their second drink, like, my craving was gone. They were already, like, my boyfriend was down and out in 3 hours after our plane landed. And from there on, I was like, "Yeah, I don't need to drink the rest of this trip." So, it's not so much that I have cravings, which I think is really weird because prior to me reading this book, which there was a little bit of hypnosis at the end of it, so I wonder if that's it. But prior to me reading this, like, there were always crazy cravings. It was always like this mind fuck. And now it's more so of an awareness of I used to drink while I cooked. I used to drink while I showered. I used to drink while I was, driving home from work. Like all of these things. And so it's not so much of a craving as it's an awareness.
So what is different now? Because when we went back to when you were 15, it was all the people around you were influencing that behavior. Now those people around you are still behaving that way, but yet you've got this newfound strength. And before you answer that, I want to try to make this relatable in a different way. Again, my addictions have very little to do with drinking.
Mhm.
Um, I've told this story to other people before, and I'll kind of share some of it with you right now. But I was addicted to ego for so long. Like my own ego controlled all that I did, so much so that I walked around with this facade all the time that I didn't want anybody to see what was really going on inside of me. I wanted everybody to see smiles and sunshine and rainbows all the time, but inside I was just broken and
Mm.
scared to death for people to see what was inside. And I was addicted to telling that lie. I was addicted to putting on a false front. I
Mhm.
was addicted to making excuses for every behavior. Nothing was ever my fault because I had to have people think that things were perfect. People could see right through it, but I had to pretend and I had to play that game. And there are still times where that temptation is there. Something goes wrong, and there's that temptation to say, wasn't my fault. There's that
Mhm.
temptation still to blame other circumstances. There's that temptation not to admit fears. There's that temptation not to just cry when I feel like crying because I have to put up this false bravado and this false front. Those temptations are still there.
Mhm.
But for me, the idea that I have shared this with other people forces this accountability on me now where I feel like, oh, now I can't let people down. They
Mhm.
expect the new real, the new me.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you relate to that story in any way?
So there definitely, like, there has 110% been a mindset shift for me. From, like, when I was 15, like, clearly I was influenced by everybody and everything. And now, like, I have enough partying days under my belt to last me probably 3 lifetimes. And so it's kind of more so like I've been there and I've done that, and I know what that leads to. And now that I have this clear vision of like what I can do in my life, because now that I quit drinking, like, that was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, but it wasn't even that hard. And so now that I did that, like, what else am I capable of? Like, I literally have become unstoppable, like, in my own head. Like, there's nothing that I can't do. And so, like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to share my story and impact as many people as I can, because, like, I need people to know that they're capable of this too.
So good. And you mentioned that you didn't even tell people for a little while that you were making this change. And
Right.
now you're freaking telling the world. And you're not stopping there. I mean, you talk about making some big goals. Do you mind sharing just some of your goals with some people? Like, what are some things you're doing here this year that you put on your calendar? And you're like, yeah, let's just see what happens.
Yeah. This year is about my year of health. And so I was I'm in zero shape to climb a mountain. And so I decided this year I'm going to climb a 14er in
So
Denver.
let's pack this real quick. You're
Yeah.
in Minnesota.
Yeah.
That there aren't mountains in Minnesota.
No,
So it's not like you're climbing out back and saying, let's go climb the mountain today and practice, right? It's okay.
we've got some bluffs. We've got just a little bit of elevation. Like we're right on the Mississippi. So we got a little bit, but like nothing like a mountain. But like now it's not even necessarily about that destination of climbing that mountain. It's the mountain that I climb every single day that my excuses for not working out, my excuses for eating like garbage, those are all of the little things that I'm squashing. And I'm once again like reinventing who I am and like who am I on on the inside. On the inside, I am somebody that loves herself and shows me that I love myself by working out and by putting good things in my body. And so it's really about like reinforcing that every single day. And climbing the mountain's just going to be, icing on the cake. And you mentioned one other thing about how, I'm sharing this with the world now, and we've talked a little bit about fears. And I can tell you, last spring when I decided to share this with the world, like I was terrified, like to talk about this. Like, what are people going to think? And for the longest time, it's like I would wake up and it's like, why am I putting myself out there? And then the private messages started coming in and the real conversations started happening. And the more I do this work, like the more it becomes so apparent to me that there are so many people hurting and really like we need to heal. And you said it yourself that you were walking around pretending to be something that you're not, and I was walking around pretending I was drinking, and that's not who I was on the inside. And the people that I have the conversations with on these clarity calls, like everybody is walking around pretending to be happy and just to make everybody else feel comfortable when nobody else is comfortable, like, and everybody else is worried about their own crap. And so you're pretending to be something that you're not. And it's like, you just need to go inside and like face yourself, get honest with yourself about like, what are the things that you're not like facing? Like, what are those like deep rooted issues?
So Amber, how do you find that identity? How do you find that person that is hidden inside when you've lived so long being somebody else, pretending somebody else? Everybody else on the outside expects you to be somebody else, assumes something else, evaluates you as somebody else.
Yeah.
How do you look at yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, that's still not who I am?
Yeah, that was a huge part of me. That was a fear of mine for not quitting drinking, is because my identity was wrapped up in
Right.
that. And I was like, well, who am I going to be if I quit drinking? And but I wanted to find out who I was. And so really it came down to, what are my core values? Like, what are the things that I live by, like that light me up inside? I am somebody that cares for people. I am somebody that is hardworking and like is present for her kids, and that, like I can help people. And so it's really like it's just starting the process of doing that inner work. What are your core values? What's something that would make you super proud of doing like in 3 months from now? Like it doesn't even have to be a year. And like why is that important to you? Like, and then all of a sudden like you start getting this vision, because when we're little kids we're taught, dream, go out, be anything you want to be, and then high school hits and you are thrown out into the world and all of those dreams are squashed. And so it's like the bills, the marriages, the divorces, everything, all of that. And it's like, okay, who was that person, as a little kid when you were still dreaming? And so my favorite part about what I do for work is giving people the opportunity to start dreaming again?
Mm.
Like, what is it that makes you happy? And 95% of the time, it's the simplest things. Like, people just want to be more present. Like, they want to get the debt paid off. They want to take a couple of vacations. Like, it's nothing like, Mars or anything like that. And so it's like those people think those things like being happy is so out of reach,
Mhm.
and it's not. We are literally the only people standing in our own way.
So good. So good. I've got like 5 follow-up questions I'm trying to organize in my brain just for that little part of the story, but I'll ask probably the hardest question first, and it's, probably the worst question because
Sure.
I'm gonna paint this as like this binary thing. I'm gonna ask you to you've got 2 choices, only 2 choices to answer.
Yep.
When you think back on your story, are you proud of your story or are you ashamed of your story?
It is hard. At this point, I'm going to say proud
Yeah.
because our adversities are what give us our
Mhm.
superpowers. And had I not gone through all of that garbage, then I wouldn't know how to connect with people and feel for people. Because when I look at other people drinking, like I don't judge anybody. Like that's on them. But like I feel for people.
Yeah.
Like I feel for the people that are still trapped. And so at this point, like I would say that I'm proud. Yeah, and that's hard to say, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And first of all, I am proud of your story. I think it's a beautiful story when you can tell it from this side of it.
Mhm.
But now I want you to have your mom hat on,
Yeah.
right? And as your kids are growing up and they make some poor choices along the way,
Yeah.
how do you respond to that? Do you allow it to happen? Do you step in and prevent it from happening? Where do you go?
I'm gonna let them make their own mistakes. The best thing that I can do is provide the example and, show them like how much I love myself and provide that example. And so it wasn't that long ago that my son was sitting on my lap and we were around some family members and they were drinking, and I remember and he's 6, and somebody asked him if he's going to drink beer when he gets older. And we put a lot of those questions on kids without even like thinking about it, but only now because I quit, like I see like how stupid it is. But somebody asked him if he was gonna drink beer when he was older, and he just shook his head and said no, and then, like, he looked up at me and he whispered, and he's like, "'Cause not everybody drinks, right, mom?"
Mm,
And literally, my freaking heart exploded because I was so damn proud of myself for giving him that example of somebody that doesn't drink in his life, because there's not going to be very many, because I mean, people still do drink around here. But I'm able to give him that example. And those kids are sponges. And who are they going to most mimic? Their parents. And so all I can do is give him the tools and let him do what he wants with those. I didn't have those tools of growing up, and that self-confidence and just other resources and ways to deal with stress
mhm.
or whatever comes up for adversity. But yeah, so you can't control anybody else. Like whether it's your children, your spouse, like nobody could control me. I had to quit for myself. I didn't quit for my kids, but
Mm.
they are getting the best version of me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now I want you to project yourself 10 years into the future. Okay.
Mm.
Right now, that overcoming part of your story is still a fairly recent story when you look at the
Yep.
history of your life.
Yep.
And it's a powerful part of your story. Your story is, it's not just a story, it's not just a story of look at where I am, it's where I came from to get here. If
Hmm.
you fast forward 10 years from now, is that still a part of the story you tell people?
Absolutely. Because I'm just going to continue to build on that. Because when it all comes down to it, there was a reason that my mom passed so early. And it and not having those resources available, like that's what I ultimately want to do. Like that's my big hairy ass goal is eventually to open a state of the art recovery center,
Mm.
and I would love for it to be have the highest success rate in the nation. And so it all has to be part of that story. So it's like, her passing, and how many people can I impact, and it really just blows my mind the people that come out of the woodworks, and tell me that they've been watching me for a year and things like that. And it's like, okay, like this is worth something.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue to celebrate you and your willingness to tell this story because it's a vulnerable place to be. If people go and they check out your Facebook page and the Facebook group you have here, that you have a lot of your recent posts are about putting up boundaries, right? And protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And even the idea of protecting yourself from people that are egomaniacs and narcissists and controlling and all of those things. And I'm reading those things. Honestly, a reflection that went through my head is she still going to want to talk to me? Is she still going to want to talk to me? Because I've been called all of those things in the past, But as I'm reading those things, I remembered at one point, I was so afraid to tell my story because I was afraid that people would see it as manipulation, that I
Mhm,
was using my story just to try to pull people in, that I
mhm.
was using my story for my own gain, hence narcissism, right? Everything revolves around them.
Yeah.
But you and your ability to tell your story comes across so authentically and so transparently and so vulnerable. It's not about you, it's about other people and using your story to serve. So
Yep.
I just want to boost you up and tell you that I am so grateful that you have gotten yourself to the place where not only where you're going through this transformation, but you are willing to tell your story, because your ability to tell your story is going to impact the thousands of people that are listening to this that you have never met, that your circle in
Yeah.
Minnesota is not associated with you yet, but you are going to inspire life change for thousands of people. And I'm so grateful for you and what you're doing right now. Just gives me the
Yeah,
chills.
it's and that's really what it boils down to is this isn't about me. And I created, some stories in my head too, like um people aren't going to care, like they're going to think that I'm doing this for likes or comments, and it's not that at all, because like it's hard putting yourself out there and it's hard being vulnerable. But that's what connects us as humans, because we are all walking around with garbages of crap, of baggage from our past, and these stories that we've made up in our heads. And we're our own worst critics. And all we want is to be heard in a judgment-free zone. And like that's the kind of space that I want to provide for people, because I get it. I've been there. And like, please. And I'm just over having fake conversations. Like when I meet somebody, tell me your trauma. Like let's heal together. And the coolest thing is like if I help one person, get their self-confidence back, to pursue their passions in life, to make a big change that they never thought that they could, then they're going to be filled with this fire. And that fire is going to be lit inside somebody else and somebody else. And like that's literally how we make the world a better place. Like
Mm,
I want to raise the vibration of the world.
yeah, so good. And your tagline is a life not wasted, right?
Mhm.
I feel like you are taking full advantage of the life that you've been given,
Yeah.
or the new life you've been given is maybe an even better way to phrase it. When you look back on your life, we'll just go 10 years in the future again. Your life will be far from over. I mean, you'll have a long ways to go still, right? In 10 years,
Yeah.
but in 10 years, how will you know that you have not been wasting your life other than climbing a 14,000
Oh,
foot mountain?
oh my gosh.
Because you're chasing goals, right? You've got lots of things
Yeah,
you're
I'm
you're
I'm
you're
gonna be
looking for. So
I'm living life on my terms,
mm,
because for so long, like we think that everything is out of our control. We think that our the amount of money that we make is out of our control. We think that our housing is out of control. Like we can't take vacations because of work. Like we have all of these things, and granted there was COVID, but there's still, we have a lot more control over our lives than we give ourselves credit for. And when you get honest with yourself and you want to make something happen, you do. Otherwise, you make excuses. And so for me, that is, like I'm living life on my terms. Now that I've quit drinking, like, all right, like I want to have 10 avenues of income.
Mm.
Like I want to now change the the financial status of my family and future generations. And I want to make an impact on the world. Like that's what lights my soul on fire. Like my mom always told me like growing up that I was going to do big things when I got older. And as a kid, I always rolled my eyes like she didn't know what the hell she was talking about. But now I get it. Like I have a purpose. Like I literally can't not do this
Mm.
because the days that I've felt like retreating and like throwing in the towel and running, like there they are. Like my mom and my grandma are literally pushing me from the universe, and they'll have somebody else send me a text message and, saying how I changed their day. And it's like, oh, I guess I got to keep doing this. And so, like, I'm just going to keep doing whatever feels good. And like I said, like I want to pour gasoline on other people's fires. Like I want people to know that they are worthy and deserving of an amazing life. And literally the only person that's standing in their way is them.
Good. And I feel like right now there are a lot of people that are hearing this saying, "You're speaking to me." You
Mhm.
mentioned COVID, but COVID magnified a lot of things for a lot of people. There were a lot of things that people tried to brush under the rug that just got pulled out right now. There are people that are saying, "I want to change my jobs. I want to change my trajectory. I want to change my
Yeah.
life. I want to change my destiny, but I don't know how to do it. I feel like I'm trapped. I feel like I'm stuck." But you are a walking, talking example that it can be done in a very real way. And I hear you loud and clear saying you want to be able to help people on this journey, right? How do
Yes.
people reach out to you individually if they're saying, Amber, you're speaking to me right now? How do they gravitate onto all of that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. You can either get a hold of me at Amber at alifenotwasted.com, or I run a kick-ass Facebook community at A Life Not Wasted.
Awesome. And all of those things will be linked at the bottom. So feel free to click on those links and get directly in contact with her. But I would also encourage you to listen to her story again, listen to her story and look for those parallels for your own life. Look for
Mhm.
those pivot points, look for those forks in the road and take that step towards that life that you want. Don't continue down that one-way road that you know where it leads. A lot of times when you're in those destructive mode, you know where that road goes. But Amber, I asked that question about where do you see yourself in 10 years and what drives success? And you had to pause for a second. And that shows me that you are on this path to success because you have no idea what the future holds right now. The future is wide open for you. And that is, oh my gosh, that is so exciting.
It
I,
blows my mind because, like, now when I set goals, like, I just complete them so much quicker than
oh my
I
gosh.
even thought possible. And yeah, like I really need people to know that who they've been up until this moment in their life is not who they need to be going forward. Like you can decide to change at any given point without needing permission from anybody. And like all you have to have is the belief that you can. And if you don't have that belief, then we need to have a conversation because I do believe
Mm.
that I can give that hope to people. We talk about where you are right now and the things that are holding you back. And then my favorite part of having conversations with people is who do you want to be in 3 months from now? And like, how do you want to build on that? Like, who are you on the inside? Most people don't even know who are in the inside. And it's just like, okay, like, let's figure this shit out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're spot on. That has been the hardest struggle of my entire life was trying to figure out who I am. And I
Yeah.
I walk around in this body every single day.
Yeah.
But when you were just talking, I feel like let me rewind. In this podcast, I tend to ask people for their mic drop moment, what is that one thing you want people to walk away with? And I think you just nailed it. And I think you said it way better than Rocky Balboa did in 1985. If I can change and you can change, then everybody can change.
Mhm.
But that's so true. People can change. They can.
Yeah,
They can.
absolutely. Yeah, literally doesn't matter who you've been your entire life, where you've come from, like what's in your past. Like
Yeah.
it's who do you want to be going forward?
Yes. And again, making this all about me because it's my podcast and I can do
Love it.
that. And
I
so
love it.
I appreciate this therapy session. I think one of the reasons I had such a hard time identifying who I was because I was looking at who I was, not who I want to be,
Hmm.
not who I am, but who I was.
Yeah.
And when people would look at me and say, "Who are you?" I was so rooted in the person I was. And
Yeah.
I did not know how to break out of that. But you have this vision for who you want to be, the things you want to
Yeah.
accomplish, the person you are going to become. And the person you are today is that person that's becoming the person you want to be. And that's exactly what I want for me too. That's so
That's
good.
how you gotta do it. Like you don't get to show up. You don't get to say tomorrow I'm gonna be that person. Like you have to start being that person today. Like I can't expect to go climb my damn mountain without putting in all of the work. Like I have to be somebody that exercises and eats right today, not just a week before. And then I go and die on this
That's
mountain.
right. And then next year when you introduce yourself to people and they say, "Who are you?" You will say, "I'm Amber Miller and I'm a mountain climber," because your
Yeah.
identity has changed because of what you've done. That's good.
Yeah, and it's all of the things. And the cool thing is like when you keep doing those things that you never thought possible, it's always like, what's next?
Mm.
And that's what makes life so exciting and so fulfilling. I don't even know what's next.
Oh, it's so good. I know I can't wait to see. I'm going to be following your journey from mountaintops to valleys and all along the way from here on out. So be ready. You talk about putting up boundaries and creating boundaries. Be ready to give me some boundaries and say, "Dave."
No, I like anybody who is good vibes, like as long as you're not bringing no negativity my way, like I welcome all of the people that are ready to make their lives the best versions of themselves and like bring me more awesome people.
Awesome. So all the awesome people that are listening to this,
Yes.
reach out to Amber. She's going to make you even more awesome. She's going to help you tap into that awesome you didn't even know existed. Look yourself in the mirror, be proud of who you are, keep growing, keep living, and know you got a life not wasted. Amber,
Yes.
thank you so much for taking time out of your
Thank
crazy
you,
busy life,
Dave.
changing your life, changing my life, changing everybody's life, and just chatting with me. You're awesome.
Oh, this was a fantastic time and I hope we do it again.
Absolutely.